Hello, friend. How's it going?
There. Um, Things are going in some directions. Things are certainly going. Um,
Okay.
I okay. So I'm going to preface what I wanted to ask you because I feel like I'm from Brazil, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm a socialist from Brazil, and you're a socialist from America,
Yeah.
and I think there are some points of struggle in which we can agree.
Mm-hmm.
And yesterday there were elections here in Brazil,
Uh-huh.
um, and I voted, and the results were in, and I just wanted to ask you, like, what is the centrist brain and why are they the way they are? Because here, what happened was, you know, they were unsatisfied with the status quo, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they tried the fascism,
Yeah, the Bolsonaro.
yeah, and they didn't like it, right? But they still know that the status quo is broken. And then come the mayoral elections, and everyone who Bolsonaro supported lost, and a bunch of socialists ran. Some won, but in most cases, when the socialists were running with the centrists, the status quo centrists who they rejected and they know are bad, the centrists won again. And I've noticed this pattern of behavior
Mm-hmm.
where a liberal or a centrist liberal is much more willing to turn to fascism than they are willing to bite the bullet and try a little bit of leftist politics. Like,
Yep.
why?
Well, because fundamentally, like centrists are aligned with capital, and capital much more neatly fits in with a fascist regime rather than a leftist regime. So and I think that like there are a lot of people in the middle who consider themselves centrists who after electing someone who's far right or a fascist, they want to go back to the devil they know rather than go the other way to a devil they don't know. Um, so they go back to the center, and I I don't know what happens after that, though. In America, there's like this. I think in America, us going to the center is actually like even as much as it feels like like a defeat. I think it's actually an opportunity. It's an opportunity to show people that centerism isn't enough. The system is broken. It's not. The far right's not going to fix it. The centrists aren't going to fix it. Well, there's like one thing left you can try here. You know.
Yeah, just point out at the failures of the current and the neoliberal establishment. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I. Yeah, I do like that approach, but still it's frustrating, right? Because it feels like it's a missed shot at greatness almost. It really is. It almost feels that way when you have these conversations with these people and you agree on so much. You agree that the systems of power are bad, that corruption is inherent to the system, that all these things happen, and then they try a fascism, and then they fall on their face and they get egged on. Um, as here like on the form of, I think here people are actually more regretful of Bolsonaro than people are regretful of Trump on the U.S. At
Yep.
least, like like here he actually took a dive in popularity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like he's like at 30 to 40% popularity, and 20% on the polls is explicitly say that they regret voting for him. um, and I try to reach out to these people and say, look, okay, you tried the thing, it didn't work. How about we try this other thing? And they don't. Like they will go for the fascists. They will go for the for the guy who worked for a fascist dictatorship. The guy who says it's better to have a son that died on a car accident than having a son that comes out as gay. And and they are more willing to try that out than anything further left of center, and it baffles me. this capitalist realism just I don't know how to handle it, like at least from a rhetoric perspective anymore, because it feels like everything I say that I think makes sense suddenly doesn't for them. So I really do wonder about the approach to radicalizing people who find themselves on these sort of positions, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think like that it's not. While it is good to point out that hey, the far right and the centrists didn't deliver what you needed, I don't think that's enough either. Like, you know, it needs to be like a call for action. It needs to be like, you need to get more socialists running. You need to get more people into local government. You need to do like all these things, right? Like it's about building a massive movement, and that's part of the problem, right? Um, so I think that recruiting for such a movement is easier under a centrist than it is under a fascist. Um,
Yeah.
and like I think that's why in 2016 Bernie Sanders got so close to the White House in America. Um, and hopefully, like I know the results of your elections have been really disappointing, but I'm, hopefully like that disappointment can catalyze into like a will to do more and to do better, and um, as people increasingly find out that these centrist politicians aren't doing as much for them, aren't tangibly improving their lives, and socialists can run saying, hey, I'm going to improve your life by doing X, Y, and Z, and they're simple. They're things we can do. I think that's something that resonates with a lot of people.
Yeah, and just to inform you, listen, like just as far as, because I may be a little hyperbolic, but to be fair,
Hmm.
some socialists did win, and social democrats did retain their power. And the left is kind of changing in Brazil, because I mean, I think some leftists might be, my foreign leftists might be more aware of Lula
Hmm.
and Lula Livre and all those good memes. But the Workers' Party, the party of Lula, is kind of dying at the moment. Like they went from 600 members on a few elections cycle back to right now they have 200 members. So
Dang.
yeah, so they are really dying, and in some ways, I mean, it's bad, right? But also it seems like there's the space being filled by actual radical socialists, because Lula and his crew, they were more like on the social democrat side, kind of like they were like they didn't really hurt corporations as much. They're more focused on like improving the means of the people, but not really tackling corporate power,
Yeah.
like this kind of thing. And and now we do have people who are like, hey, so about that, the people who are going to pay for it isn't going to be the middle class anymore. It's going to be the corporations, right? We are still going to have social projects, but you aren't going to pay for it. The banks are, and the corporations are, and people are afraid of these talks sometimes. And I do think that it's I I struggle sometimes to really communicate these ideas in a way that doesn't sound like I'm telling them to burn everything to the ground,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah.
Though sometimes it does feel like that, but wink wink, peaceful revolution. It's Yeah, it's just, I feel like I'm ranting at this point, like just stream of thought meltdown. But yeah, it's bad, and it hurts also, because I look around us, and our of our neighbors are are actually having good leftist movements, like Chile, Bolivia, and now that thing that happened in Guatemala, all that good stuff. And we're just stuck on this fascistic hellscape that now seems to be going back to a neoliberal hellscape. So, and I think Americans can relate to that as well, after what everything went through. Like the accelerationist theory didn't really pan out either
Right.
here or there, I believe. as far
Right.
as as far as as far as the far right goes, it's, yeah. But yeah,
Yeah. I mean it. it's easy to feel the defeat, and I think it's okay to feel the defeat, but let that spur you on, you know, because again, if you give up, they win.
Yeah, yeah, no, I'm not taking the doomer pill. I'm just, I'm still in the meltdown phase, like because it just happened yesterday. So I'm still at that point where I'm kind of like, yeah, yeah. I'm usually that person who says, liberals, they're people like us. They have good intentions, they can be pushed left, and then that happens, and then my beliefs get challenged on that one, and it's hard. It's hard.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but really, as far as approaching how I mean, shifting for something you do know, as far as the left goes on with Joe Biden moving forward, like, well, what's really the game plan as far as the criticizing of the movement, like, and at the same time not alienating the regular liberals and the Democrats and so on and so forth, right?
Yeah.
How what's really the game plan for doing that? Because I do feel like sometimes the left can be a little bit isolate I can sometimes isolate itself a little bit
Mm-hmm.
in rhetoric. So how to do that while staying true to the core principles that we should be pushing for, right?
Well, I think a lot of it comes down to we need people who are good with a tone, because liberals care a ton about tone, and people who can point out the problem without being hyperbolic, right? So like one of the issues that I see that alienates a lot of like liberals or neoliberals tends to be like the rhetoric of like eat the rich, or like you know guillotine time, stuff like that. Um,
Yeah,
and I'm not
I
saying like people on the left shouldn't do that, or like there isn't room for that, but I am saying like when we're talking about outreach to liberals or outreach to neoliberals, like we need to be a lot better at that stuff. Because like earlier on the stream, I someone wanted to call in, and like we had like a really good conversation about like fraud and like capitalism, and I think that I managed to change a mind there. And I'm not going to say that that's going to happen every time, but like these are the kinds of things that we need to foster, the kinds of interactions that we need to foster, like calmly explaining what's wrong with the situation, how it's not helping people, and how we would tangibly help people in a way that, you know, isn't just like I steal all of the rich people's stuff and I give it to the poor people. Like we no, we need actual like policy positions. We need like how are you going to distribute these things? How are you going to uh you know what are the policy positions and plans? Because again, you can say these things. I just don't think it's an effective way of getting liberals or neoliberals on board.
yeah, yeah, I do sympathize with that also, the watching out for tone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because um there is this tendency, right, to want to avoid conflict and work towards compromise. So I do suppose that wording things in a way that seem like compromise, like, well, have you heard of worker co-ops? I do understand that
Yeah.
the
Like
the
it's about the optics, right? You have to keep in mind how you come across.
yeah, not go on Rose Twitter and say liberals get the bullet too,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that has tends to alienate some people, yeah.
yeah, and another question I have as far as propagandizing and spreading the message goes. I mean, how
Mhm.
do you feel about like debate spaces? Because some people I see on the left are very much against the idea of debating far right people or people with extreme ideologies, and some
Mhm.
people are believe and some people are for it, believe that it's a net positive. So how do you feel about that in particular?
I think it's fine. The main issue is if you're going to go into a debate, A, be good at debate, and B, understand like what your role in the debate is going to be, right? Because like I, for example, would never go into a debate with someone who's a Nazi and like treat it like it's a serious discussion, because like
Mm,
there aren't rational arguments
yeah.
for like being a Nazi. And like that's why you would go into the debate, and when I say not treat it like a serious discussion, I mean I do mean you would go in with the facts, with your arguments, and you'd be able to just like talk and kind of make fun of your debate, like your debate opponent. Like that's the real merit of going into one of these debates, is being able to make fun of and make your opponent look silly if they're like a far right ideology. Because like that's they deserve mockery. They're fucking Nazis. Like, and they don't have good arguments. Like, you can go over every argument for a Nazi, like a Nazi has, and they're all bad gish galloped arguments. So like, if you go into a debate, know that A, you're not working to win over the person you're debating, you're working to win over their audience. And the best way to win over a Nazi's audience is by making them look fucking stupid.
Yeah, I mean, you don't really go to talk with a Nazi to just, and if I mean, if you go talk to a Nazi or a white nationalist and you end up saying something like, you know, you raise some good points, but I mean that's already like you already went too far on on treating them like they have anything to bring to the table, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't concede like literally anything whatsoever if you're going to talk with these people. Like you can't really say like, oh, you know, my points of view are just as valid as yours, but here's where you can't really be polite to these people. I do
Right.
I can't see that. um so what about the argument that for about kind of tangentially related, like the dirt bag leftists who are edgy and kind of alienating, and I mean I'm
Mm-hmm.
really just working at just phrasing their argument here, not necessarily that I agree, but that are alienating to their more vulnerable audiences because they will say the F slur or whatever. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, how do you feel about that in regards to leftist online discourse, right? Like
Um,
what's the line to be drawn as far as
yeah.
how edgy you can be before it starts getting weird?
Um, well, first off, Naums42 in chat, I have spoken with Nazis, yes. Um, and Gish Galloping, the train mod, is basically when someone lists a bunch of claims very, very quickly. So that, like, if you stop the conversation to basically address each one of those claims, it would then take, like, 3 hours before you could get to something else. It's basically kind of what, like, Ben Shapiro does, just like dumping a bunch of like claims on the table and then moving on. Um, but as far as edge lords, I think that there's a place for them, like in like leftist circles, because I think those are the people who are really good at basically forming a reverse pipeline from the right to the left.
Mm.
They're the kind of people who are going to be attractive to someone who might come from like a neo-Nazi community, right? Like they're like, oh, you're playing around with language, you're using some of the same memes, okay, but instead it's going the opposite direction. It's sucking them out. Um, Now, as far as like how far that can go, that's a bit of a gray area, right? Like I I wouldn't say that like someone who's like using the N word, for example, is probably they're probably not doing a ton of good, right? Like again, think about the optics, right?
Yeah.
Um, so there is like diminishing returns the farther right you go with your jokes. So I'd argue, being edgy is fine, but I think there's a difference between being edgy and like uh like appropriating other like slurs that aren't yours, you know?
Mm,
Um,
yeah, not shouldn't really be trying to reproduce to uncritically reproduce m- extremist talking points from the right.
yeah.
Just not, yeah, should just do everything with a purpose, I suppose. Is yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with that. And do you actually do you actually like believe in the idea that there are a significant amount of people being de-radicalized online like that just by passively consuming constant content? Like,
I mean, I think it's pretty evident to me anyway that like there are people who get radicalized by content online. So it also seems like it would follow that there are people who also get de-radicalized by content online.
yeah, I suppose so. It's just that when I do get on those arguments, there's usually a mockery of that idea of that people do get de-radicalized online, because usually the argument is that someone who is radicalized, they are already entrenched within their communities, and they already like have their fucking Nazi Discord going on.
Hmm.
So it's not watching like any particular content creator's video that's really going to send
Oh
down
yeah.
them down that path.
Yeah, it's not any one content creator. It's like the general pipeline, right? So
Yeah.
like you start watching like I don't know Fox News, then you move to David Crowder, then you move to Ben Shapiro, then you move to um, like I don't know from there maybe you go to like Nick what's his face the Nazi Nick Fuentes um, like I don't think there's a big leap between Ben Shapiro and Nick Fuentes. But like just like that happens, like yeah, it can happen on the left too. Like I started out watching mainstream news outlets, and then I started watching the Young Turks, and then I started watching Sam Cedar, and then I started watching other people on the left. So like it happens both ways. Um, and I think did I say David Crowder? For some reason, I keep calling him David. But yeah,
Uh,
Steven Crowder. Um, but yeah, so like it goes both ways, and I think that like the poo-pooing of that idea is something that keeps us from de-radicalizing people because, like, the reason I say make fun of Nazis if you're going to debate them, make them look stupid and silly, is because that's one of the easiest ways you can get their audience to like find someone else to de-radicalize because it makes them without pointing a finger directly at them feel stupid and silly and they want answers to kind of rebut the things that you bring up in a debate and that can sometimes take them back to the left um so
yeah,
like I also don't want to make it seem like as like a lefty anyone should be making their content exclusively to de-radicalize people. I think that is a very narrow category, but I think it should be like a tool that we all keep in our pocket, something we keep in mind.
yeah, yeah. I mean, usually, I mean, personally, my stance usually tends to be that both debate spaces and safe spaces are welcome and needed for their own reasons, right? On the left,
Hmm.
like it's fine to have both, right? If you're not comfortable with certain types of content who are meant to reach out to these more questionable elements and bring them left. I mean, it's always good to have other content creators you can go to,
Hmm.
so you can feel safe and cozy. And where do you see your own channel being on that spectrum, right? Between like a debate space and then like a safe space, and how the kind of how you approach the way that your community see the topics you talk about, right?
Yeah,
How how do you see yourself on that spectrum?
I mean, I guess I see myself as not exactly being a spectrum. Like I want my community to be both like a comfortable space that people can hang out in, but I also want to make sure that like it's like a community that's not afraid. It's like a community that's willing to tangle with these forces that are aligned against us, and like that doesn't mean that like we can't have. Uh, I think maybe there's a part of it that's like almost like a false choice. Like you can have a safe, comfortable community that also is virulently anti-fascist, right? Like you can have
Yeah,
a
that's fair.
safe, good community that is willing to put up with people who are uh, like bigotedly conservative. You can have that sort of a community, um, but I think that kind of a community needs like goals, like to know that they're not just like sitting there and taking abuse, and that hey, Rykal, this isn't just a pretty good socialist stream; it's the most incredible socialist stream on earth. Um, but yeah, I want a community that is both gentle and soft, but also powerful and insistent. And like I don't think that those two things contradict each other. Like I think that it is possible to debate fiercely and still have like a comfortable and a friendly community. I don't
That's
know.
fair.
I don't know if
That's,
that
I mean,
answers
that,
your
no, no,
question.
no. That's fair. That's fair. That's fair. That's fair. I did the false choice thing. I acknowledge that. That's a fair answer. Okay, and 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 really, I mean, you have been growing steadily, right,
Hmm.
for the past month or so.
Yeah.
Um, where do you see it going, right? Like, what's your ideal? Like, do you have any long term goals or any ideals
Yeah.
for
I mean,
the direction you're bringing you getting the community?
yeah, my goal with starting the channel and starting to do this kind of content in the first place was to build up a big community that can actually enact some sort of political change, right? Like I want a community that like I can be like, "Hey, guys, we're going to do this thing." And it might be a really big thing, and I want us to be able to go out together and accomplish it. Whether that is going into Georgia and like being able to kind of flip those elections with our combined might. I want to like I want to be the biggest politics streamer on Twitch. I want to be bigger than Hassan. And when that happens, I want to be able to use like the money from this channel to basically push this country in a better direction by hook or by crook, you know. And yeah, I want to be able to do that. That's my goal. Like I want to make this country better than when I was born.
I I love it. I mean, I mean, I think it I think that's great. Honestly, I mean, I think it's refreshing,
Hmm.
to see actually have actually because I feel like I'm not going to name anyone, right? But I feel like there is sometimes a tendency among leftist streamers to kind of underestimate, and leftist content creators and leftist personalities in general to kind of underestimate their own voice,
Hmm.
right? That they're safe, they're satisfied with having like this niche little space, and that's enough for them, and they don't think much far ahead. But no,
Yeah.
there's actual change to be made, right?
Yeah.
And that there are ways to make things better, because the outright the outright and the hellscape that the U.S. got into is arguably like a product in large part due to people on the internet being stupid and spreading their stupid ideas to stupid people, and that's how. I mean, that's also oversimplification, but I mean, it kind of also happened. Gamergate happened, and then the
Hmm.
outright happened, and then Donald Trump happened, and I mean, if they can do it, why can't we, right?
Have you ever sat through an entire Tim Pool video?
Holy shit! No, actually,
Yeah.
I always, yeah, I
Go
can't.
I encourage every leftist to go sit down and watch an entire Tim Pool video. That man is the most widely watched English language political commentator in the world. And he creates content that is boring as dirt. It is the
It's
most boring thing you will ever see in your life. Second maybe only to Dave Rubin, And if that man can be the biggest, I sure as shit can be bigger. Okay, so that's like that's my goal. Like if Tim Pool can be that fucking huge, I can do it too. You know?
I mean, that's a good fucking argument, that I haven't thought about. Like, I mean, I honestly, even though Tim Pool is so big, you're right. He's also so boring. I just forget about him, right? Because, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, if you're talking far right reactionaries like Ben Shapiro and Nick Fuentes are much more exciting, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But Tim Pool is so big, and he just like monotonely. It's just a monotone thing where he reads articles from some right wing sources and briefly comments about a civil war, and that's every
Yeah,
video. That's every video, and I'm like, okay, so that's what's popular with the Americans. Okay, that's great. Um,
exactly. Now
yeah,
imagine boring content like that, but instead of like, oh dang, looks like there's gonna be a civil war, you're like, hey, let's fucking do something about it. And that's my content.
yeah, just whatever one thinks about Destiny canvassing is like a good tool to use, right? As well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, doing what, and I'm not sure how he's thought about here on this channel, but like what Washington should do, like making a pack is
Mm-hmm.
is a good thing as well. Actually, there are lots of ways in which because I mean, Simple, he kind of passively makes the world a worse place, but
Yeah.
he doesn't actually. But like, it would be much worse, I think, if he was actually getting his followership. Like, hey, let's do a reactionary protest. Then let's
Yeah.
do a reactionary counter protest to BLM. And it's kind of like, I mean, at least, I mean, I think like, yeah, the left could go even further than they are willing to go, right?
Yeah.
If you actually organize people through the online spaces.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, yeah. By the way, no knocks against Tim Pool. Like other than being toxic for discourse to a certain extent. Like props to him. I'm sure it was hard to build his channel up that big. But also we're coming for you. We're gonna be bigger, okay?
Oh boy. Oh, Vosh. Oh, Husky talked about the Vosh team pool debate. Did you watch that?
I did, yeah.
That was a funny shit show.
It was really good. It was really good.
Oh boy. I mean, hey, if you get big and if you get like actually big and
Hmm.
Timpo invites you to his COVID chamber,
Yep.
would you go?
Absolutely.
So you'd go to the COVID chamber, right?
Yeah, you gotta chase the clout.
Can we clip it and hold you to that if the day comes?
Absolutely.
Okay, amazing. And yeah, I mean, and credit to Team Poet. I'm actually kind of impressed that he actually went through with the whole "I will debate a leftist in person" thing. I mean, I think that's good, right? It's
Yeah.
it's a, it's a good thing. Good for him. And and yeah, also just curious, like you said that you watched a few content creators who helped move you for the left. I mean,
Yeah.
if I understood it correctly, I mean, what are some of those, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, for a while I watched like TYT was pretty big. The Young Turks. Uh but Sam Cedar definitely really helped. The Michael Brooks show. Um and also like a lot of Professor Richard Wolf's content helped me a lot to kind of solidify my economic understandings. And then on top of that, uh, there was definitely like some Peter Coffin in there. Like I think a lot of Peter Coffin's mini documentaries are pretty excellent. I'm a bit torn on him recently. I'm not
Oh
I'm not
yeah,
really sure what direction he's going in anymore. Um,
uh,
and
yeah.
I like Vosh. I like Vosh quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, Jesus Christ, our pipeline was very much identical for me to also arrive at kind of like these. At least, I mean, so far, I
Hmm.
may I may be I may be tanky peeled or ML peeled or completely uncompelled yet. But I did arrive at at market capitalism through the same kind of routes. It was also like mostly fucking Sim Cedar, and then Professor Richard Wolff, and some Vosh in there as well. I mean, it's I think it's interesting. Like I feel like the specific ideology of market capitalism is getting way more popular now than it was just a few years ago. Like
Do you mean market
I didn't,
socialism?
yeah, market socialism.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, did I say something different?
I think you said market capitalism.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay. Oh, no. I mean, yes, but no. Yeah, I mean, I didn't really even hear about it like a couple of years ago, and I was a fairly political person even back then, but I didn't hear much about the idea of market socialism and this kind of, because I mean I feel like in some ways market socialism is kind of more attractive to also the liberals that are looking to get radicalized, because
Exactly.
it doesn't get rid of some of the things that they hold dear to heart, right? You can still say, look, I agree, there are things that the state cannot do, and markets are great, markets are great for some things. But here, how about we actually look at economic theory, right?
Hmm.
And what is actually good for the economy? The fact that productive, say, happy workers are good for the economy. So how about we decommodify some things here to make them more productive and make the markets better there, right? I think this is an approach that I see working well enough with people who actually are fans of capitalism, but that you can kind of push over into something different, right? Because
Hmm.
they like aspects of capitalism, they like markets, they like the
Yeah.
economy, they like buying shit, they like variety, they like competition, but all these things can also work with the workers owning shit. So
Well, and
it's a,
and also like I think this is something we can get on board with a lot of people who are farther left, because like I'm farther left than market socialist. I just say that I'm market socialist because I think that that is a good first step.
yeah.
And whatever comes after that, I think that market socialism sets us up pretty well to transition whichever direction we want from there.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I'm probably farther left as well. I just don't think about the farther quite as much, because I think it's kind of, I'm not saying it's larpy to be an income, but I do think that if you talk about the post-capitalist society more than you talk about fixing the capitalist society, it is a bit larpy, right? Because
Yeah.
I mean, these are things that we are not at yet. These are discussions that we really shouldn't be disproportionately having. We should be talking about actual feasible steps we can take right now, right?
Yeah, like that's my issue. Like I have no by the way, no problem with people who want to talk about better things for the future. I think we need people like that. But
Yeah,
the issue is just like I want feasible steps that I can argue for now that will definitely make the world better. Won't make it perfect. That's like the whole misconception that a lot of people who are against socialism have. It's not a utopian ideology, but it will make things better. And that's what I
yeah.
want. I want things to be better. And if people in the future can make it even better than that, that's awesome.
Yeah. I've been struggling with one little aspect of arguing with people, is which is like explaining to them exactly why, because I feel like once you get through the whole listen, this system will absolutely reduce income inequality and fix some problems, and then people start kind of questioning core concepts of economical theory, like why is income inequality bad, right? So I mean, if you had to explain to someone, because I had this conversation recently, like why is income inequality a bad thing for the economy? Like how would you go about that in simple terms, you know, for
Well,
this kind of,
I think in very simple terms, like how does an economy work, right? Like it works by money changing hands. So if there are like for the sake of argument, like 100 people make up the top 0.1% and they're sitting on billions of dollars that aren't circulating, that's not good for the economy. It means that there's less economic activity happening. because they're hoarding the wealth.
Yeah, and I do say that, and then people say, well, but but most of Jeff Bezos' assets are actually unproductive forces. He's not hoarding wealth because the money is not sitting there. Then what? What's the next step in that argument?
Well, I think part of the argument at least for me tends to be that like we live in a country where like your essentially your freedom is linked to how much money you have. So why should Jeff Bezos, by virtue of having more money than you, be more free than you? Like
Yeah,
exponentially more free. The dude can literally build a spaceship if he wants to, and he's doing that actively right now. So like why I'm not arguing that everyone should be able to build a spaceship, but I am arguing that maybe one person shouldn't be able to build a spaceship, and maybe instead we should, as a society, agree that maybe one man shouldn't be able to build a spaceship, and maybe like the trade off
yeah.
for that is that hundreds of thousands of people don't have to be homeless and starving to death on the street,
Yeah, I
right? Like
mean,
like if we're talking about like trading off like rights, I guess I would prioritize the rights of like people to live over the right to for Jeff Bezos to build a spaceship.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's usually what it amounts to, right? The misconceptions about positives and negative freedoms that people seem to have when talking about socialism.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like kind of like, I mean, like you're the most free you are is if you're like you are naked in a jungle. That doesn't mean it's ideal. Doesn't mean it's like the most positive freedom you could have is if you're naked in a jungle. Doesn't mean that we should strive for that. I mean, though I do hold dear to my heart my anarcho primitivist friends. I don't mean to be divisive by saying that being naked in the jungle is bad. Like if any anarcho primitivists are there, I love you still.
Wait,
And
how would they
yeah,
be? How would they be here?
that's true, right?
Isn't it kind of
That's
like talking about the Amish?
yeah. Are there Amish online communities?
I don't think so. Maybe like Amish people on like Rumspringa or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I suppose I can't talk about anarcho primitives because they're not anymore. But yeah, and I mean, in regards to what you said, and yeah, I agree. But like, and I'd also like add that people talk about Jeff Bezos is having lots in assets, but like most of his shit is on stocks, right?
Mm-hmm.
And stocks aren't really any are just really fictions mostly.
Yeah.
It's not it's a completely separate system. The market isn't really doesn't really correlate with the with the standards of living of people, right? So
Right. Like there are a bunch of different tactics you could take, right? You could break down like, well, did Jeff Bezos really earn those stocks by virtue of owning Amazon? I don't know. I
uh,
feel like people who pack the boxes in the warehouses contribute more to the success of Amazon.
it's a lot of it of the idea that like great men it's kind of like it's a little bit like great man theory, right? Because when you think about defending capitalism,
Hmm.
this idea that great men are what drive for society forward, and the rest of the people are just that you follow their lead, and the Amazon workers are just following Jeff Bezos' lead, and the Elon Musk engineers just following his lead because at the end of the day, his vision is what makes Exxon or Amazon or whatever the fuck
It's
company.
true. It's true. The employees dying and pissing in bottles. That's part of his vision. It's a really big part of his vision. Just a
Yeah,
lot of piss everywhere.
yeah, and it's so strange, you know. Capitalism realism is a really strange thing. Once you move farther left, I mean, it starts to make less and less sense. Like because at some point, right? Most of my life I've been like this social democrat was like Well, what if capitalism but good, right?
Right.
And then the more I think about it, the less it kind of makes sense, because there are alternatives, like you said, like fucking market socialism is like it's everything capitalism is supposed to be, but fucking better. So yeah, it's just and so sometimes it feels like I'm losing a little bit of my ability to relate to people who are more on the right, because I'm starting to understand the arguments less and less. Right? Have you ever felt that way? Like you kind of distancing yourself a little bit from how they think, and it's like you're looking from the outside then, right?
Yeah,
Onto that.
sometimes it's one of those things where like I f- I find it difficult to get into the headspace of people who are like, yes, actually people should work or they should die. I think that it is a fine economic system where we live in a place where if you are not able to work, you die unless you're incredibly wealthy. So like I think that's a pretty messed up and weird system to have. Like just on the most basic of levels. And I think maybe like hey, wouldn't it be nice if instead we lived in a system where like you didn't have to work or die, and instead you could choose to work to like better yourself or to better your community or because you wanted like a video game. I think that would be a way better like system to live
Yeah,
under.
yeah, and it always it's and you say that. And then the average politically engaged non-leftist, not even like a fucking right winger, but just someone who's like not quite on the left, they'll always engage like you're talking about unicorns,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like it can't be. This can't exist. It never existed. It cannot exist. It's not a thing. Socialism has failed everywhere, and then killed so many people, and it always goes the same way, and you can see that they look at you kind of like you are telling them that the moon is made of cheese, right?
Yeah.
Like they take that step back, and it's just weird to me, because I was that person, like just maybe a few years ago, right? Like I said, I was always a social democrat, and I had leftist friends, and I was like, and to me, they were fine and good people, but their ideas were wacky, and it's weird to me to think that that's how most people will look at me now, like this person with who might be a fine person, maybe even a smart person for them, but someone with wacky ideas, someone with an eccentric worldview, right? Because these things just cannot exist. It's not
Well,
that I think they probably will fail, it's just that it cannot exist.
well, and I think this is where like having some like understanding of like socialist history becomes really handy, right? Because I am able to articulate like, hey, actually the USSR wasn't socialist, and I can explain kind of where that split is over Stalin. And I can explain like the history of socialism was that socialists had two different ideas over taking the state. Evolution, which is where you work within democracy, or revolution, which is where you take the state by force. But just taking the state doesn't make a state socialist. You have to use the power of the state to make the state socialist. And that's where like every single one of these socialist communist revolutions like completely fell flat. They didn't actually transition to a socialist state. None of those workers had control over their working conditions. Like, and like I think being able to make an argument like that, like did the workers in Soviet Russia actually have control over their working conditions? No.
Yeah,
No, they didn't.
I agree.
What about China? No. Well, then it wasn't socialist. Like I think these keeping these very simple ideas in mind help us have conversations about with people who might otherwise look at us like we're talking about unicorn ideology. Um, like it helps ground them in reality. It's like, well, no, no, I guess you're right. Like, so, okay, so it's never been done, so how would you do it? Well, like, that was basically the first caller I had today. Like, someone wanted to talk about capitalism, and so I was just like, okay, yeah, we talked about it, and I was just like, yeah, like, here's how I would do it. I would transition over to worker co-ops, and we know how worker co-ops work because we have them right now, and we have a bunch of data on them, and the data is all very positive. So we'd transition to worker co-ops, and then we would decommodify these things using tax money,
Yeah.
and it'd be easier to tax people because you wouldn't have billionaires. I mean, again, in this far future, like it would be a slow transition to worker co-ops, but yeah,
I mean, that's how it goes with capitalism. Also, I mean, people like to think that capitalism is the beginning and end of history, but capitalism also went through a transition,
mm-hmm.
and it failed lots of times as well,
Yep,
until it finally got a foothold. Same goes for other prevalent institutions like fucking democracy, right? One thing I like to say to people sometimes when they talk about how socialist attempts failed, because I mean I agree, the Soviet Union and China are not quite socialist, but I think it's fair to say that they were attempts, right? I think that's fair,
mm-hmm.
and I like to say that, like, okay, what if you are like a 17th century farmer, and someone talks to you about democracy and the idea of workers owning, and the idea of of peasants electing their leaders, and they look at you like you're a moron and talk, well, that never worked. Have you seen what happened in Rome? And it's kind of like that, right? It's a process until you can really, until the conditions are there in which that good idea can actually take place. I mean, maybe it wasn't there before after the Russian Revolution, but it may be here now, right? Because that's how
Yeah.
history progresses. And though it sometimes gets hard to argue that when the left is right beside you, uh, go from their chair, and then screams, "No, but China is socialist. Actually, you're wrong. It's actually very good as it is today, and we
Yeah,
should bring China here." And I
yeah,
mean,
we should let China should take over the entire world so that then they can enact their plan to become like make the world socialist, which I'm
by
sure would
2050,
happen.
no, the world will become socialist by 2050.
Yeah,
Isn't that
yeah.
what I said?
Uh-huh.
I mean, it will. I mean, it will. I mean, they said so. Like, I mean, it's there. It's written. They said it, so it's true. And and honestly, I don't know how to engage with that idea. Honestly, I do not. I cannot. I can talk to liberals. I can talk to conservatives. I cannot talk to tankies, like, or dengists. I cannot. I don't know how. Do you have an idea how to engage with that idea that China is actually very good?
I,
Because I mean, I'll concede the point that they improved the conditions of the workers over what was there before, which was like a fragmented territory, right? And then Mao came there, organized that shit, and then they went
yeah.
through the economic reforms, and then things got weirder and weirder as time went forward, and now we are where we are. But I don't know how to talk to these people
I
about.
I don't necessarily know if there's like a way you can reach tankies. And not that there shouldn't be like some sort of pipeline, but like I don't think that they make up a big enough portion of the left to like worry about when it comes like I don't know. I tend to disavow tankies because I fucking hate authoritarianism. It's not my bag. I don't like it. And so like somebody who's defending like an authoritarian state and like defending like concentration camps, like no, I hate concentration camps in the United States. That doesn't make the concentration camps in China any better. Um, and so like
I,
I tend to just be like, tankies are authoritarians with communist clothing. You know, they're I appreciate that there are some Marxist Leninists who are not tankies. I have them in my own community. I like them very much. Um, but I think defending state a state that engages in state capitalism because you think that they're going to be good faith and that capitalism won't have corrupted them, I think that's very silly. So yeah, my general position is that no, you should not like fall into this garbage. And the people who do, like, I can make a good argument of like, hey, maybe we should debate like we should debate people on the far right because, and I say this because people on the far right get a lot of eyeballs. Like
They're-
they're like
yeah, they're,
liberals, neoliberals, conservatives, even if they're not radicalized to the alt right, everyone loves seeing a good dunking on a Nazi. Um, Whereas tankies, I'm not sure if there's anything to be gained by like publicly debating them. I'm not sure if there's anything to be gained by like engaging with them in a really big way. So like I don't necessarily see the gain there, you know?
yeah, yeah, I get it. Also, I mean, you just revealed a very, very radical political position there, that concentration camps bad.
Yeah,
That's
it's
one, yeah, that's
wild.
I mean, are you is that even TOS to say that concentration camps shouldn't exist? I mean, I don't know, it's
Yeah, I don't
pretty
know.
radical there. Yeah. That's, I mean, holy shit. I mean, that's one debate you have, right? Are
I,
concentration camps? No, I mean, it's the words there. Um, yeah, I can see it. I can see it. I can see it. I can see what you're saying, right? That's it. Just doesn't matter. They don't matter, and I agree. I get annoyed then. It's just annoyed. It just annoys me. It's a pet peeve.
yeah.
It's 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 just that because they are prevalent enough that you will always run into one when you're in a left state space, right?
Mhm.
They're just enough to not matter but still be annoying and just there, right? 250 years from now, we are in perfect in perfect communism, and there will still be people who go, yeah, but we should have more funny hats and more tanks and more prisons. And I just it's I can't handle it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it.
I'm
I hate it.
sorry.
It's my weakness. It's when I get petty. When talking about tankies or talking to tankies, that's when it completely shifts from me from any sort of political purpose to just I don't like you. I just don't like you. I want to make you feel bad for being bad at thinking, and that's just how it is. I just want ways to hurt them, just not out of anything, just because I don't like them.
I gotcha. Well, do you have anything you want to shout out before you go?
I would just do what I did before when I came here. A shout out and Biggie Butts channel. He's a very nice guy. He's been trying to grow his community. He goes on insane long streams. He went on a 25-hour stream
Oof.
once, and he usually goes over 10 hours of streaming. He's very, very, very dedicated person that I think deserves some eyeballs on him.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
and and thank you, Jack. I really do hope you grow there and you get the voice out. I think you're doing good work, and appreciate it.
Yeah. I hope we grow too. And yeah, it's always nice having you on here, Venom Jesus.
Okay, no problem. Bye bye.
Bye. Love you very much.